When we speak of the collapse of the narcissist, we are not merely speaking of the failure of a human mask, but of a deeper psychic implosion that occurs when the illusion can no longer hold itself together. It is as if a fragile glass vessel has been filled with too much pressure from within and from without, and the cracks, long hidden beneath the paint of charm and the polish of control, begin to widen until the structure shatters. The narcissist lives not from the fullness of the self, but from the distortion of the persona. And when the empath finally sees through this performance, the mirror that sustained the narcissist's illusion is withdrawn. This moment is apocalyptic for the narcissist because their survival depends upon reflection. They have no inner light to guide them, only borrowed rays that must be stolen from another. When the empath ceases to supply this reflection, the entire edifice of the narcissist's false self begins to collapse into a void that has always been there, but was covered over by constant distraction. The empath, by contrast, is not destroyed by this realization, but awakened. For too long, the empath has confused compassion with servitude, love with self-abandonment, and sensitivity with submission. They have been hypnotized by the archetypal drama that pits the giver against the taker, the healer against the wound. And they have been captured by the ancient myth of the Redeemer, who believes it is their destiny to save what does not wish to be saved. But when the empath sees the truth, the spell is broken. It is not merely that they perceive the lies, the manipulation, the cruelty disguised as need, but that the empath finally perceives their own unconscious collusion in the game. To see the truth is to recognize one's own projection. For the narcissist is powerful only insofar as we feed them with the very energy we refuse to claim for ourselves. Consider this dream. A woman wandered through a vast house filled with mirrors. Each mirror reflected her face, but in some, the face was distorted, cracked, or even missing. As she walked deeper into the house, she realized that one particular mirror did not reflect her at all, but showed instead the image of a man with a cold, expressionless mask. She felt both drawn and terrified. When she reached out to touch the mirror, it shattered into pieces, and behind the broken glass was a dark void that threatened to swallow her whole. This dream reveals the empath-narcissist dynamic. The empath wanders through mirrors, mistaking distorted reflections for love, until finally they confront the void that lies behind the narcissist's mask. And in that moment, the danger is not simply the abyss of the other, but the confrontation with their own shadow, the parts of themselves they have long refused to face. The collapse of the narcissist is therefore also the confrontation of the empath with their own unconscious. For the empath must ask, why did I remain? Why did I endure the diminishment of my light, the constant erosion of my soul, the endless cycle of betrayal and reconciliation? What archetype within me demanded that I play this role? The answer often lies in the forgotten child within, who once believed that love could only be won by sacrifice. That acceptance was possible only if one gave more than was received. That safety lay in anticipating the needs of the other while silencing one's own. The narcissist thrives upon this forgotten child because they intuitively sense where the wound lies. They press upon it, manipulate it, exploit it, not always consciously, but with the ruthless instinct of the predator. And so the empath becomes ensnared, not because they are weak, but because they are still in bondage to an unconscious myth of love. The moment of awakening occurs when the empath sees that this bondage is not destiny but choice. That the chain is held not by the narcissist's power, but by their own refusal to confront the shadow. To see the truth is to recognize that the narcissist's cruelty is not a reflection of one's worth, but a mirror of their own emptiness. It is to realize that no amount of giving will ever fill the abyss in the narcissist's soul. The collapse of the narcissist begins precisely here, when the empath withdraws projection, when they cease to feed the mask, when they no longer agree to play the role of savior, for the narcissist cannot survive without an audience, and the empath has been their most faithful witness. When the witness turns away, the theater of illusion crumbles. Yet let us not misunderstand the collapse. It is not always dramatic, though it may manifest in rage, despair, or sudden abandonment. More often it is quiet, hidden behind a new mask, concealed within another performance. The narcissist may flee to another empath, another source of reflection, desperately seeking to maintain the illusion. But within them, something has cracked. The recognition that they are seen not as the image they project, but as the void they conceal, creates a wound that cannot easily be ignored. Some collapse into bitterness, some into depression, some into isolation. Others redouble their performance, creating even more elaborate personas to escape the unbearable truth. But the collapse is inevitable, for no one can maintain forever a mask that is no longer believed in. From the perspective of depth psychology, this collapse is archetypal. It is a death of the persona, the moment when the mask of the ego is confronted with its own inadequacy. In the individuation process, we are all destined to face such a collapse, though most of us resist it. For to face the collapse is to face the shadow, and the shadow is terrifying. But it is also the beginning of transformation. The narcissist's tragedy is that they often refuse this transformation, clinging instead to the ruins of their false self. The empath's salvation is that they can choose to embrace the collapse as an invitation to reclaim their own self. The truth seen is not only the truth about the narcissist, but the truth about the empath's own hidden patterns. To awaken is not simply to leave the narcissist behind, but to step into one's own wholeness. Do not think, however, that this awakening comes without cost. The empath will feel grief, rage, despair, and even guilt. They will mourn not only the relationship, but the years lost in illusion, the energy wasted, the dreams shattered. They will struggle with the temptation to return, to rescue, to believe once more that love can heal what only the self can heal. They may feel the pull of archetypal forces, the great mother who longs to nurture, the wounded child who longs to be loved, the martyr who longs to be redeemed. But if they hold fast, if they remain with the pain rather than escaping into another illusion, then the collapse becomes not destruction, but rebirth. The empath emerges no longer as victim, but as sovereign, no longer as redeemer, but as self. The truth then is twofold. The narcissist collapses because they are seen, and the empath awakens because they finally see. It is a mystical moment, a tearing of the veil, a revelation that shatters the old world and opens the path to the new. In alchemical terms, it is the nigredo, the blackening, the descent into chaos from which new life may be born. In mythic terms, it is the death of the old hero and the birth of the new. In psychological terms, it is the withdrawal of projection and the confrontation with the shadow. But in human terms, it is simply this: the moment when you realize that the love you sought in another can only be found within yourself. It is easier to give than to receive, easier to heal than to admit one's own wounds, easier to pour out compassion than to face the silent chambers of the heart where longing has lived unspoken. Yet, when the empath withdraws their gaze from the narcissist, they are forced to turn it upon themselves. And this is perhaps the most frightening vision of all. To see the truth in another is to be compelled to see the truth within. Here lies the paradox of the empath. They feel so deeply for others because they have repressed so deeply within themselves. Their sensitivity, their capacity to perceive unspoken pain, is often born from their own early experiences of being unseen, unheard, or unprotected. They learn to feel into the room, to anticipate the needs of those around them, to dissolve their boundaries in order to survive. In this way, empathy becomes both a gift and a curse. It allows for profound connection with the suffering of others, but it also binds the empath to those who exploit that gift. The narcissist is drawn to this gift as a moth to flame because it offers them exactly what they cannot generate on their own: the warmth of recognition, the mirror of significance, the illusion of wholeness. But the empath, blinded by the archetype of the healer, mistakes this demand for intimacy, mistakes this hunger for love. When the veil is torn away, the empath begins to see that their compassion was never truly met, only consumed. They see that what they thought was reciprocity was merely reflection, a mimicking of desire, a counterfeit of connection. And with this realization comes an immense wave of sorrow. For it is not only the narcissist who collapses, but the world of meaning the empath had constructed around the relationship. Dreams of healing, redemption, and shared transformation dissolve into dust. It is as if one awakens from a long dream and realizes that the beloved was never truly there, only a phantom, a shadow sustained by one's own longing. This collapse of illusion is devastating, but it is also liberating. For once the false is gone, only the true can remain. The collapse of the narcissist mirrors the collapse of the empath's projection. Both are dismantling of illusion. The narcissist collapses because the mirror no longer reflects, and the empath collapses because the mirror no longer deceives. But whereas the narcissist resists this collapse with all the force of their being, clinging, raging, fleeing, anything to avoid the abyss, the empath has the possibility of embracing it. To embrace collapse is to allow the old self to die, to surrender to the chaos that precedes rebirth. This is why so many myths speak of descent. Inanna descending to the underworld, Orpheus descending to retrieve Eurydice, Christ descending into hell. The descent is necessary. One must pass through the dark to reach the light. The empath's awakening is nothing less than such a descent, a confrontation with the underworld of their own unconscious. I recall the vision of a man who came to me in despair after leaving a relationship with a woman who had drained him for years. In his dream, he stood in a great cathedral, its windows shattered, its altar overturned, every candle extinguished. At the center of the cathedral was a coffin, and when he opened it, he saw his own face lying within. He wept, believing that he was dead. But then the figure in the coffin opened its eyes and whispered, "Now I begin." This dream reveals the truth. What dies is not the self, but the false self. The persona that believed love must be earned through sacrifice. The illusion that one's worth is found only in another's recognition. The death of this false self is terrifying, but it is also the birth of authenticity. It is the moment when the empath ceases to live for another's gaze and begins to live from the depths of their own soul. The narcissist cannot abide this shift, for it removes from them the very foundation of their being. Their collapse is not simply emotional but existential. They have built their identity upon the reflection of others, and when that reflection is denied, they are confronted with a void they have long denied. This void is not merely emptiness, but the absence of the self, the refusal to engage with their own shadow, their own wounds, their own unconscious. They are left with a hollow persona that no longer convinces, and while they may rush to fill this void with new sources of reflection, with new relationships, with endless distractions, the truth has already been revealed. The mask is fragile. The performance is unsustainable. A collapse once begun cannot be undone. For the empath, the collapse of the narcissist offers a strange gift. It is the mirror turned inside out, forcing them to confront not the illusion of the other, but the reality of themselves. And here lies the possibility of individuation, the journey toward wholeness. To individuate is to integrate the shadow, to embrace the parts of oneself long denied, to reconcile the opposites that have been split apart. For the empath, this means reclaiming the power they projected onto the narcissist, the autonomy they sacrificed in the name of love, the voice they silenced to maintain peace. It means recognizing that true compassion does not mean self-abandonment, but arises from a center that is whole. It means discovering that love is not the erasure of the self, but the flowering of the self in a relationship. The path is not easy. The empath must wrestle with inner demons, guilt that whispers they have betrayed their calling, fear that they will be alone forever, anger that burns at the years wasted. They must resist the temptation to fall into cynicism, to harden their hearts, to declare that love itself is a lie. For love is not a lie. Illusion is. And once illusion is burned away, love can emerge in its true form. Not as possession, not as dependency, not as reflection, but as the meeting of two souls who are whole in themselves. This is the destiny that awaits the empath who perseveres through the collapse, who endures the darkness without fleeing, who dares to face the abyss and find there not annihilation, but rebirth. In this way, the story of the narcissist and the empath becomes a myth of transformation. The narcissist plays the role of the deceiver, the trickster who lures the empath into illusion, forcing them to confront the limits of their own unconscious patterns. The empath plays the role of the dreamer, the healer who must awaken to the truth that salvation cannot be given to another who refuses it. Their meeting is fated not because it is destined to last, but because it is destined to awaken. And when the empath finally sees, the drama ends. The stage collapses, the actors disperse, and the true journey begins. For the collapse is not the end of the story, but the beginning of individuation. And so, to those who have lived this drama, who have endured the collapse and felt the abyss, I say this: do not despair. The collapse is not the end. It is the threshold. It is the initiation into a deeper life, a life no longer bound by illusion, a life lived in the radiance of the self. Do not curse the darkness, for it has led you to the dawn. Do not curse the narcissist, for they have unknowingly revealed to you the truth you most needed to see. Take the fragments of the broken mirror and see within them not your failure, but your freedom. For now, you are no longer a reflection in another's eyes. You are the light itself. And when you walk forward from this place, you will walk differently. Your gaze will no longer be hungry. Your heart is no longer desperate. Your soul is no longer bound. You will carry within you a stillness, a power, a knowing that cannot be shaken. You will see others not through the haze of projection, but with the clarity of truth. You will love not from fear, but from wholeness. And in this, you will have completed the sacred work, the turning of illusion into wisdom, the transformation of suffering into strength, the transmutation of shadow into light. This is why the narcissist collapses when the empath finally sees the truth. Because truth is the one force they cannot endure. And this is why the empath rises in that same moment, because truth is the one force that sets them free. If this resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might be experiencing similar challenges. Join our growing community of thoughtful individuals exploring psychology, consciousness, and personal growth by subscribing to ThinkDeep and enabling notifications. Remember, where you are right now isn't your final chapter. It's the starting point for becoming who you're truly meant to be.